On Air Force One this morning, Trump admitted that he is not allowed to run for a third term. We'll see if he sticks with this because he flip-flops on things all the time. But he's been floating running for a third term in 2028 since he took office. He's even had hats and other merch printed saying Trump 2028. And this has been raising alarm bells. Even a senator yesterday strongly called out for his arrest should he decide to run for a third term, citing he would be in violation of the Constitution. Mike Johnson even said that he likes to just do this to troll the Dems and that he doesn't really want to run for a third term. But look at this clip from Trump on Air Force One.
We have the greatest economy we've ever had. I have my highest poll numbers that I've ever had.
No,
and
you don't.
Based on what I read, I guess I'm not allowed to run. So we'll see what happens.
Johnson says you're trolling when you talk about a third term.
Well, I don't think he said that. I don't think
he said that.
Term, but it's a very interesting thing. I have the best numbers for any president in many years. Any president.
He does not.
And I
it's
would
some
say
of the
that
worst.
If you read it, it's pretty clear. I'm not allowed to run. It's too bad. I mean, it's too bad.
It's too bad? I mean, he looks almost disappointed there. Like, he was maybe really actually thinking about it. And I think he totally was. And still is. What do you guys all think about that? Do you think that Trump will try to run for a third term despite all this? Or do you think he will hand it over to someone else? Will he even make it there? Let me know what you think in the comments. Like, share, spread the word, follow, subscribe, and I'll see you back here for the 411.
I've been telling you guys this was coming, and now it's happening. Right now, this week, the conversation has changed. It started when Donald Trump started talking about a third term again, which, by the way, I am appalled at how many on the left took the bait. Because Trump throws out the absolutely rancid trash idea of a third term when he finds himself needing either a distraction from a failure or from a reality unfolding that he simply cannot allow to be true. So when the left immediately takes his bait and starts panicking about a third term, we are doing his work for him when instead we need to be looking in the exact opposite direction. Because that's where the thing is from which he is trying to distract us. So what's the thing? Is it because he's trying to hide from the crushing increases in healthcare costs? Is it because he's running away from the peace deal that is neither peace nor a deal? Is he trying to change the subject from the fact that everybody thinks he sucks and polls show everybody blames him for the shutdown? No, it is not. It is this. Next week, the Supreme Court is going to hear opening arguments that will decide whether or not he has the power to unilaterally impose unregulated, unlimited, indefinite tariffs on our trading partners. And as they hear those arguments, the Supreme Court is going to have to decide whether they apply the major questions doctrine, which would by default require them to side against Trump. Because in a sentence, the doctrine says that the executive branch cannot assume authority to make decisions that have vast economic or political significance without explicit authorization from Congress. And since the emergency power he's using to claim authority to impose tariffs says nothing about taxes, tariffs, or duties, there is absolutely no logical way that the tariffs he's imposed through this emergency power, which is about 2/3 of his tariffs, could survive the application of the major questions doctrine. But we know the Supreme Court is willing to lie down for Trump. So the question then becomes, will they? That is going to depend on the signals they get from Congress, which is why as Trump again floated the idea of a 2028 term, J.D. Vance actually went to the Senate to try to convince Republican senators to vote against 3 consecutive bills that seek to restrict Trump's tariffs on Brazil, Canada, and the rest of the world. Now, before you say the Senate Republicans would never turn on Trump, remember they already did. They already voted once back in April to cancel his tariffs on Canada. Of course, Mike Johnson wouldn't allow that vote to take place in the House, and Trump would certainly veto it if it got to his desk. While these Senate bills are purely symbolic, symbols like the Republican Senate specifically saying, no, you do not have permission to impose tariffs, would be impossible for the Supreme Court to ignore. Which is why Trump both sent J.D. Vance to speak to senators and also why he floated the 2028 threat. Because when you look at this chart of search trends, you can see that basically no one is searching for Vance 2028. Meaning if Trump wants to force these Republicans in Congress to continue to do his bidding, he has to once again resurface the old threat that if they go against him, they won't be able to ride on his coattails again in the future. And wouldn't you know it, they voted against the Brazilian tariffs this week anyway, because the Republicans in the Senate are starting to realize what Marjorie Taylor Greene already understands. When it comes to election cycles, we already live in a post-Trump world. The faster the rest of us get on board with this reality, faster the Trump agenda becomes thinner than the purple skin on the back of his hand.
So there you have it. Your president admitted himself that he is not fit to run for a third term. Those of us with common sense are aware of the 22nd Amendment and know that no president can run a third term. So enough of the Trump 2028. Y'all that was rooting for that, you could put that to rest because he even admitted it himself. He's not fit We all know that. Number two, he's too old. Number three, he's not even healthy. So, yeah, y'all can hang that up. You can forget about it. We don't want to hear about it. I'm so glad he admitted it himself because I got sick of that Trump 2028 with the hats, and that was a mess. So, again, if you were rooting and hoping and wishing, you can stop wishing and hoping because, as we know, the 22nd Amendment stands and no president can run for a third term.
For the first time, Donald Trump has admitted that he cannot run for a third term in office, seemingly trying to put to bed this controversy that has spread like a wildfire, and justifiably so, a controversy started by Donald Trump, by himself, and by those around him. So Steve Bannon, his senior advisor, previously said that there is a plan in place to install Donald Trump for a third term in office, despite it being clearly unconstitutional. Then Donald Trump refused to rule it out, even suggesting that there could be a scenario where he ran as a vice president only to then be installed as president again, an unconstitutional scenario. And well, now this morning he woke up and while on his East Asia tour, admitted that he cannot run for a third term, saying that it's, quote, pretty clear, referring to the 22nd Amendment of the United States Constitution, calling it, quote, too bad, and saying that there are, quote, a lot of great people who could step forward. Now, here's the thing. This comes after Mike Johnson confirmed that there was no legal path for Donald Trump to seek a third term. And then Trump and Johnson spoke to each other behind the scenes. And now Trump is taking a different tune publicly. Now, he is using his words carefully. He said that there is no way he could run for a third term. Serving a third term may be different. And he has been known in the past to walk back on his prior statements. He has been known in the past to kind of change or try to find a way to get out of what he said years before. And so we're going to see whether this rhetoric stays the same over the next 3 years or whether he starts changing his tune. Because remember, at the White House, there are still Trump 2028 hats that he displays, that he gives away to people. And so while he's still doing that, he is seemingly admitting that he cannot run for a third term. But I will say this is an important step because even if he decides to try to circumvent the United States Constitution in 3 years and walk back his statements from today, these statements are forever history in the sense that the United States Supreme Court and courts around the country will be reviewing his statements today where he says it's, quote, pretty clear. And I agree, the 22nd Amendment is pretty clear that the President of the United States can only serve 2 terms, and he is now in his second term in office. And it comes as mounting court losses overnight compounded for the Trump administration. Late last night, I reported about how Senate Republicans rebuked the Trump administration and voted to overturn, in a merely symbolic vote, the 50% tariffs on Brazil. So we had that. Then we had the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals agree in en banc to essentially hear among the full court, about 20 judges, en banc.
It looks like Trump has finally accepted reality. I mean, at least for 5 minutes or so. While he was flying to South Korea, he told reporters, if you read it, it's pretty clear. I'm not allowed to run. It's too bad. Yeah, you heard that right. Okay. The person who floats the idea of being president for life at least once a week just discovered the 22nd Amendment. You know, that amendment that's been sitting there since 1951. But honestly, you almost have to laugh because it's like watching a toddler finally accept that bad time is a real thing. It cannot be avoided. Of course, he didn't say it with joy. He called it too bad, as if democracy personally offended him, you know. But still, for a man who's been testing the limits of the Constitution like it's a scratch-off ticket, this is progress, you know? So congratulations, America. The bar is so low, but at least it hasn't been dug up yet, you know? And honestly, if democracy had a Aura ring, it would show a faint pulse right now. But hey, at least he admitted it before someone tried to rewrite the Constitution on Truth Social for him. Thought we'd have a laugh.
So while Trump is in Japan, he just admitted something today that a lot of people weren't paying attention to, and it will definitely be the nail in the coffin for a third term. He literally said, after reviewing everything, and he refers to the 22nd Amendment, which is solid, plus add the 12th Amendment to that, and there's no way around it. You can't serve more than 2 terms as a president, and it even goes on to say, between both of those amendments, that you can't even be a vice president if you don't qualify for being president. Anyway, he's obviously just read these, and he just fully admitted on camera to the media today that it's pretty clear that he wouldn't be able to be president for a third term. And then he qualified it with, but I've got some good people and whatnot. But no matter what happens, if it ends up in front of Congress or a court, we've got the tape. He is the president. He's like at the top, right? And he said, it's pretty clear. End of story. Thank you, Trump.
Good afternoon, everyone. We have some big news as Trump has admitted that he cannot run for a third term. For the first time during this administration, Trump has admitted that he cannot run for a third presidential term in 2028. He said on Air Force One, "It's a very interesting thing. I have the best numbers for any president in many years, and I would say that if you read it, it's pretty clear. I'm not allowed to run. It's too bad." This, of course, comes as many Trump allies like Steve Bannon have claimed that Trump will be president again in 2028. I'll believe it when people stop saying that he'll be president and when he himself stops selling and giving out 2028 merch. I mean, let's not forget he has an entire 2028 merch section in the White House. Trump has the worst numbers for a president in US history in both terms. He is at the bottom, the worst of the worst. A quick Google search will tell you that, of course. Yet he continues to lie about it, so his supporters have a way to glaze him. Numbers don't matter to them, only what comes out of Trump's mouth. He's not allowed to run again, and I will believe that when he actually proves that he is willing to recognize that, genuinely. When is he going to stop selling 2028 merch then? Why is he even doing that in the first place? When are his supporters like Steve Bannon going to stop saying that he will be in the White House in 2028? That is what it will take for me to believe that from him. With that being said, though, thank you everyone for watching this video. Like and repost to get the information out, and drop a follow for more news content. Later.
For the first time, Donald Trump has admitted that he cannot run for a third term in office, seemingly trying to put to bed this controversy that has spread like a wildfire, and justifiably so, a controversy started by Donald Trump, by himself, and by those around him. So Steve Bannon, his senior advisor, previously said that there is a plan in place to install Donald Trump for a third term in office, despite it being clearly unconstitutional. Then Donald Trump refused to rule it out, even suggesting that there could be a scenario where he ran as a vice president only to then be installed as president again, an unconstitutional scenario. And well, now this morning he woke up and while on his East Asia tour, admitted that he cannot run for a third term, saying that it's, quote, pretty clear, referring to the 22nd Amendment of the United States Constitution, calling it, quote, too bad, and saying that there are, quote, a lot of great people who could step forward. Now, here's the thing. This comes after Mike Johnson confirmed that there was no legal path for Donald Trump to seek a third term. And then Trump and Johnson spoke to each other behind the scenes. And now Trump is taking a different tune publicly. Now, he is using his words carefully. He said that there is no way he could run for a third term. Serving a third term may be different. And he has been known in the past to walk back on his prior statements. He has been known in the past to kind of change or try to find a way to get out of what he said years before. And so we're going to see whether this rhetoric stays the same over the next 3 years or whether he starts changing his tune. Because remember, at the White House, there are still Trump 2028 hats that he displays, that he gives away to people. And so while he's still doing that, he is seemingly admitting that he cannot run for a third term. But I will say this is an important step, because even if he decides to try to circumvent the United States Constitution in 3 years and walk back his statements from today, these statements are forever history, in the sense that the United States Supreme Court and courts around the country will be reviewing his statements today, where he says it's, quote, pretty clear. And I agree, the 22nd Amendment is pretty clear that the President of the United States can only serve 2 terms, and he is now in his second term in office. And it comes as mounting court losses overnight compounded for the Trump administration. Late last night, I reported about how Senate Republicans rebuked the Trump administration and voted to overturn, in a merely symbolic vote, the 50% tariffs on Brazil. So we had that. Then we had the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals agree in en banc to essentially hear among the full court, about 20 judges, en banc, over whether or not Trump's deployment of military to Portland is constitutional, is lawful. And so for now, he can't deploy the military to Portland, which is a pretty big loss for Trump. And then there was another court loss for Trump, as a federal judge in California issued a preliminary injunction extending the block on Trump's ability to fire federal employees during the government shutdown. And then there was another court loss for the Trump administration, as Bill Asalee, who's the acting U.S. attorney for the Central District of California, he was deemed disqualified from overseeing criminal cases, disqualified to be acting U.S. attorney because he was improperly appointed by the Trump administration. So loss after loss after loss. And now this morning, Trump wakes up and says, you know what? I can't run for a third term. Whether there is a connection, I don't know, but that is the news right now. If you haven't subscribed yet, please consider doing so. We're sending a one-time donation via Venmo to Aaron Parnas to support my work. Now, Donald Trump is in South Korea today, and he's there for APEC-related events. He was met with significant protests from progressive groups and opposition politicians who accused him of imposing unfair trade tariffs and pressuring Seoul to boost defense spending. Demonstrators chanted anti-APEC and anti-Trump slogans. They had big signs saying "No Trump." There were also a lot of anti-China protests right now in South Korea. Overnight, Donald Trump did dismiss all 6 members of the United States Commission of Fine Arts. Why is this important? Because the United States Commission of Fine Arts is the federal board responsible for reviewing his planned White House ballroom and proposed Arc de Trump, the monument he wants to build in Arlington, right in front of the Arlington National Cemetery in Washington, D.C. The White House says that it will appoint new commissioners aligned with Trump's America First agenda, as public criticism continues to mount over the $300 million ballroom. We have now entered day 29 of the government shutdown, almost a full month of a shutdown. SNAP benefits will expire in just 2 days. I want to say, personally, I am very thankful to all those who have contributed. We actually raised over $10,000 in the past 24 hours for the DC Capital Food Bank. It's the second largest single day fundraiser in their history from an individual. So thank you to all those who have supported. That will feed about 20,000 meals for families in the DC area. I encourage you to donate to local food banks in your area as well. Today, Maryland Senate President Bill Ferguson rejected Democratic efforts to pursue mid-cycle redistricting, saying that the legal and political risks outweighed potential gains from adding a congressional seat. So while Republicans mid-cycle redistrict in states like Missouri, North Carolina, and Texas, very few Democrats are standing up and doing the same. Governor Newsom is, but the Maryland Senate Democrats are not. The Pentagon has implemented a new policy to expedite the firing of civilian employees, directing supervisors to remove underperforming staff with, quote, speed and conviction. This was a memo signed by Undersecretary Anthony Tata on September 30th and shortens dismissal timelines and increases managerial accountability. Paramount Skydance has announced plans to lay off more than 1,000 employees just months after the recent approved merger by the Trump administration. And it comes as there are layoffs happening across corporate America, from Amazon to UPS and more. Folks, that's all the news right now. As always, make sure if you want to support my work, click the subscribe button, like, comment, share, and subscribe. And I will see you this evening for another update. So stay tuned for more. It's expected to be a pretty busy day. So I'll have more coming very soon.